Welcome to the Half-Blood Report.
The place for Percy Jackson news, interviews, and all things Riordan. I'm Samuel, your co-host.
And I'm Diego, your other co-host.
So let's jump into the Demigod news. And actually, there's a lot to discuss this week.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we missed 1 week discussing Demigod news because of our John Rocco interview, which super good. You got to check it out.
If you haven't already.
Yes. All of a sudden, there's extra Demigod news for us to discuss.
Yeah, a lot more than we thought.
And there's usually we try to do like 3 things for Demigod news. But then like we usually like only 2 of them are important. But we are like discussing 4 things and they're all pretty important. So first up,
Rick Riordan presents. They did a kind of video with Roshani Chokshi, the author of the Arusha series, and her grandmother, and they kind of talked about stories. Well, they didn't actually talk about stories as much as I would have liked. It was more like her grandmother and her in one video, and then Roshani kind of like trying to sell us the book, and then like her grandma kind of just there. But they told one story, and it was cool, and you guys should watch it anyway.
I think Diego's not talking it up as it. No, it's a really really good
It's
video.
a sweet video. I like it.
So first up, I want to say props to Reed Riordan. This is one of the best promotional materials they've done in a while, and I hope that they do more videos and these in the future. Like even if it's just as Diego says to sell books, like it's still a really sweet video. And
Good way to sell
I
books.
actually almost and I almost prefer it to like the like videos we have gotten before where Rick Riordan Presents author gets interviewed with Rick Riordan. Like Rick Riordan sits and does an interview with them. He's done that with basically every Rick Riordan Presents author for their first time, but this one is different. It's her Roshani Chokshi's 3rd book in the series, and it's not an interview with Rick Riordan. It's a conversation with her grandmother. And I actually disagree with Diego. I think I would love to have a future film of Roshani Chokshi and her grandmother and then a 3-minute video, but it's still cute, and to like see, I don't know, it's pretty good. So I as along with Diego, I recommend you watch it, though I think I like the video more than Diego. So
No, don't get me wrong. It was good. It's just there's always that one like note. I think what Reed Riordan should try to do is like do like an unedited cut of like if they start doing more videos with like authors like talking to each other, or authors like talking to people who aren't with like the company. I think they should do like a promo video, and then they should do like an unedited, well, not unedited, but like a open cut of the same video for content as opposed to promotion.
I don't think that's a good idea, Diego. I don't think anyone wants to release unedited stuff as a film major myself.
Well, not unedited, but like you get what I mean. Not promotional focus, like just podcast.
Oh, you. Wait, but then wouldn't Reed Riordan be competing with us?
Yeah, never mind. That's a bad idea. I love how I went on a little rant there, and the end result was no. Moving on.
Yeah. So during coronavirus, a lot of authors are stepping up and making content, and Carlos Hernandez from Rick Riordan Presents and author of Sal and Gabby, he has actually become one of those authors, and he's started a new YouTube series called Volcanic Writing. And it's basically like a YouTube series to kind of inspire kids to write, where he first comes up with like a writing prompt, and then he like shares his story with in the video that he wrote for the writing prompt, and then he sort of talks about the literary techniques he used. And
He's also funny.
also
He's also Carlos Hernandez.
Yes. So he also the videos are very humorous as far as educational stuff goes, and I definitely recommend, even if you're not a kid, like just watch the first 3 minutes of the video. Uh, I'm not going to force you to watch the whole video, but if you watch the first 3 minutes, you probably will watch the whole video. Yeah, but it's not very long. It's just the 18 minutes, so it's less than the average Half Blood Report podcast, so that's something.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I highly recommend checking that out, especially if you know any young kids who like to write and want to learn more about it.
Yeah.
On his channel, he did like an interview with himself for like classrooms, so teachers can just show that video to their kids, and it's kind of like your regular author Q&A, where he kind of answers frequently asked questions about Sal and Gabby and about himself. Of course, if you do want a really good interview with Carlos Hernandez, you should go to
Check one
episode
of
9
ours
of the
out.
Half Blood Report.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we're also going to be interviewing him
For Sal and Gabby too.
upcoming in May, so that is also coming to you.
Yeah, something to look forward to. Another thing I want to say is if we may discuss the video for a second. My favorite character or person in the entire video was the paper bag monster. And if you don't know what the paper bag monster is, it's a little paper bag with a couple of eyeballs glued to it, voiced by CSE Cooney, and that was the best part of the whole video.
No, the paper bag monster was definitely amazing, and I actually really want the paper bag monster and Gum Baby to have a crossover. I
Oh
don't know if that's
yes,
possible.
yes. I want the the paper bag monster to become canon. The paper bag monster has to be in Sal and Gabby. That's a request, Carlos, if you're listening, make it happen.
I think that's
Too
I think
late,
that
too
might be
late,
too late.
too late.
Yeah.
But like, still, write a short story.
Oh, speaking of short stories and Carlos Hernandez, I actually just read The Cuban's Assimilated Guide to Quantum Santeria, and that was his first book before Sal and Gabby,
like a
and
Tres
that's
Navares for Rick Riordan.
and
Except,
that's actually the book that introduces Sal and Gabby, and he talked about it in our interview, and also that interview on his YouTube channel, where how he kind of wrote these two adult characters, adult Sal and adult Gabby, and then when he got asked to write a book for Rick Riordan Presents, he had the idea: what if these two characters, who I really liked, are my favorite characters I've ever written, what if they met in middle school? So that's that that comes up in the book, and you get to see, and the stories are so good. There's like unicorns, but not in a fantasy way, in a way only Carlos Hernandez could write. There's robot pandas and
Quantum
uh
Santeria. There's a lot of that.
yes, there's, well, not actually a lot. There's Sanctity is only in the last story, which actually might be my favorite. I don't know. It's definitely, and it's a short read. I read it in one sitting, so I recommend you check that out, especially because Sal and Gabby Fix the Universe is expected to be his last book under the Rick Riordan Presents imprint. So if you are hoping for more Sal and Gabby, that's a place you can find it. Anyways, I think we
Can
can.
move on. Speaking of short stories, actually, well, not short stories, more like a little paragraph. But Rick Riordan released this little snippet of action after the Heroes of Olympus, which I'm not sure if it's canon. Like, I know he
It's
wrote it,
not. It's
but the timeline doesn't work out.
No, he actually says, like, oh, it probably doesn't work out with the canon timeline, so it's not really canon.
But
But
it was a
he
great
basically,
little moment with our favorite characters.
yeah, it's the 7 heroes just eating nachos. And he actually, when he was on tour for Blood of Olympus, he would joke about how he was going to write an Other Heroes Olympus book, and it would just be like 500 pages of the 7 heroes eating nachos. And so he didn't write those 500 pages, but he wrote like a couple pages. I also thought it was really funny because a lot of people say the Blood of Olympus is the worst book he's ever written, because of how little Percy and Annabeth there is. So he kind of trolls those people in this. I'm not gonna lie, like he like yes, it reminds me of the way he handled Shippers and Reyna in the Tyrant's Tomb. It reminds me a lot of that, the way he's just like, yeah, I'm calling my annoying fans out on this. So it's also a short read, so it's a shorter read than a simulated guide, which I was just telling you to read. So this will not take you 5 minutes. I highly recommend uh reliving the seven heroes, even if it's not technically canon. It is kind of sweet. And yeah, also Rick Riordan actually only released it because he's like, oh yeah, it's coronavirus. So this is a thing I was kind of wrote after the Blood of Olympus, that's kind of like set during that time, but I never really released it. So I'm releasing it now for these, like, I hope it makes you feel better during these times. Diego, did it make you feel better during these times?
It did. It made my day a whole lot better because it was a bunch of characters that are no longer with us, and they were kind of all in one place, and we know that they'll never again be all in that place being nice and happy. So it was really depressing, but also happy at the same time because everything's sad now.
Well, that's Diego's unfiltered opinion on Nachos After the War, our Heroes of Olympus outtake. Oh yeah, there's a link to the description. There's basically a link to the description and everything we talk about. So
You guys should check it out.
yes, our last piece of demigod news. It's a highlight, a character highlight. Diego, you want to talk about it?
Yeah. So, if for those of you guys who don't know, when this episode releases, will the book have released? No, no. But this week,
It is releasing this week. It is
it is
releasing
releasing this week.
like
But it will not have released by Monday. So,
you might want to say the name of the book too.
oh yeah, Arusha and the Tree of Wishes is releasing sometime this week. So you guys should definitely check it out or read it whenever it does come out. But basically we got a little character sneak peek, and the character is Opal, and she's kind of like the from what I gather from the article, she's like the PR specialist behind the Pandavas kind of mischief.
Yeah, she's basically, so we got in the description that there was a whole PR thing that's trying to rebrand the Pandavas because a lot of people don't trust them. So at the Festival of Holy, there's gonna be a whole rebranding, and it looks like Opal is gonna be in
In
charge of
charge.
that.
Yeah. So she'll definitely be a main character, I feel, or at least in the exposition.
And Diego has the strange habit of calling the first few chapters of a book the exposition for some reason.
Yeah, yeah. Just every the whole first half of the book is exposition. No, but
That's
I
that's Diego's opinion. Every book, unfiltered.
yeah, every book, just the whole first 10 chapters, nothing. No, actually, Rebecca Roanhurst did a great job of not doing that. So I guess not. But moving on. Opal will play a big part in this whole like PR scandal that we have. And she seems like a not good person from the article. Like she's a good, as in she's fighting for the good side, but she's just like against everything that the Pandavas do. So I feel like Aru's gonna have a real like tough time getting along with Opal, and they're definitely gonna get into some fights.
Yeah, especially she's like telling them not to hang out with the twins that are like also Pandavas. She's telling them to like cut all their friendly ties with Boo, which is like evil. Um and I actually, Diego's saying that she's like bad as in doesn't have, she's the nicest person, but I'm actually, the fact that she's like seems so mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, there was a plot twist where she ends up being like working with the sleeper the whole time. I wouldn't be surprised about that.
Actually, yeah, now that you say it, that seems kind of true, cuz she could be like the PR person behind um making the sleeper seem slightly appealing to the asuras.
Mhm. Yeah. So, Opal, the it's actually, so it's the character's name, but it's actually also like a stone, and it Hindu in Hindu like legend, there's a thing where like the opal was created when the mother goddess changed the virgin goddess when the mother goddess changed the goddess of the rainbow into a stone because a bunch of other gods like were trying to trap the rainbow goddess. Doesn't make a lot of sense. But there so I don't think it's coincidence that this character is named Opal. Opal is a stone that has significance in Hindu legend, so
Yeah, so
that
that's
also might just play into our character.
precisely. So yeah, we'll probably do an episode like about Arushan, the Tree of Wishes, where we discuss it and everything. So and this is our last episode to make some advanced predictions. So yeah, Opal will play a big part, and according to Sam's background research on Opal, she might even be a goddess in disguise and might be behind the Sleepers PR. So that's our last prediction, and in less than a week, we'll see if we're right.
Yes, but we won't actually be talking about it on next episode. We'll be talking about it in 2 episodes from now because next episode, I am happy to announce we will be doing an interview with Roshani Chokshi,
About
author of
Arusha and the
Arush.
Tree of Wishes.
No, it's not gonna be about Arusha. We won't be talking about Arusha. I. Why would we talk about Arusha, Diego?
Yeah, I mean, why would we ever do that?
No, we're gonna talk about Sal and Gabby, and then when we interview Carlos Hernandez, we're gonna talk about Arusha.
That sounds like a great plan, Samuel. So, be sure to send in your questions, and we'll not ask them to Roshani Chokshi.
I hope you all understand that "not" is in quotation marks. No, but honestly, if you have a question that you want to ask Roshani Chokshi, author of the Arusha series, email it to us, and
And we'll
we'll
ask.
try to make it into the interview. And that's it for the Demigod News, I think.
In just a second, we have our first Oracle section on a book that a lot of people are looking forward to.
But first, I just want to tell you about our sponsor for today's episode. The Veiled Monarch is a new book from Jolly Entertainment about a dystopian world in which a shadowy organization called the Iron Oath keeps humans safe and regulates the non-human communities. As time goes on, the Iron Oath loses its grip. The fall of the organization throws friends against each other and brings enemies together against common challenges. Get The Veiled Monarch on Amazon, Kindle, ebook readers, and coming soon to audible.com. Or visit pagejally.com to get your copy. And seriously, it's a cool book. And I think it's time to consult the Oracle.
As we've said in this section, we look into and research a future Rick Riordan Presents book. Or in this case,
A book by Rick Riordan.
Yeah.
And
There you
this
go.
week, we chose to look at The Tower of Nero, the highly awaited conclusion to the Trials of Apollo by Uncle Rick himself.
I'll read the description and then we're going to talk about it and the research that we did on some of the clues that we got. We're also going to be talking about some of the stuff that we got in the preview chapters. So if you haven't read those already, there's a link in the description. But here is the book summary. At last, the breathtaking, action-packed finale of the #1 best-selling Trials of Apollo series is here. Will the Greek god Apollo, cast down to earth in the pathetic mortal form of a teenager named Lester Papadopoulos, finally regain his place on Mount Olympus? Lester's demigod friends at Camp Jupiter just help him survive attacks from bloodthirsty Gauls, an evil Roman king, and his army of the undead, and the lethal emperors Caligula and Commodus. Now the former god and his demigod master Meg must follow a prophecy uncovered by Ella the Harpy. Lester's final challenge will be at the Tower of Nero, back in New York. Will Meg have a last showdown with her father? Will this helpless form of Apollo help him face his arch nemesis Python, who will be on hand at Camp Half-Blood to assist? These questions and more will be answered in this book that all demigods are eagerly awaiting.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, it's a sick description.
It wasn't much of a summary, just, kind of just a bunch of questions.
Which we will kind of try to answer. Sort of.
No, I could have written the description better, all right? Who will Apollo end up with in end? Will Meg stop being a bratty little kid? Will Nico become back? Will Rick Riordan be good about this? What will Rick Riordan's next book be? You know, stuff like that.
Yeah, those would be
Will
cool.
Zeus stop being a whiny little guy?
No, I think Rick's gonna kill everyone in the end.
Oh man.
I'm joking. But that would be funny. That'd be so funny and so evil. But it would be amazing if in the end he just had Nero kill everyone and then Python just like ate the sun Apophis style.
No, that wouldn't be funny at all. In the Percy Jackson fan Discord server, someone was like, "Oh yeah, I'm actually a time traveler from the future." And they were like, in the fourth series where Percy Jackson where Annabeth dies and then Percy Jackson goes rogue. And I was like, you know, that's that it's a very sad plot line, but actually something I'm interested in. Like,
Wait, how
I
does
mean,
Percy
I would
Jackson
read
go
that.
rogue? Does he start
He
like
becomes like an anti-hero. I don't know. He becomes like an anti-hero and like cuts all ties with Camp Half-Blood or whatever. I don't know.
that would be a great piece of fanfic which I would probably read if I read fanfic, but I don't.
I would read it if it were written by Rick Riordan. I probably wouldn't read it otherwise. It would be too heartbreaking.
Yeah.
um,
All right.
but no, we got a little off topic there. But what's your first impression when you read the description, but also when you read the preview chapters?
So when I read it, I was just reminded of all of the loose ends from the Tyrant's Tomb. There's a lot of stuff that's still left to clean up, and I'm curious to see how Uncle Rick is gonna, pull everything together and leave us with a like satisfying ending. And a question that I gravitated towards was, will this helpless form of Apollo have to face his arch nemesis? And that's like a really big thing because I mean he has been getting like lucky a lot with like defeating people, but like overall, most of the time he's kind of like a helpless teenager that can't really do anything. So I'm curious, like when he recounted, I believe in the first book, like his fight with Python the first time as a god, he said it was impossible. So I'm really curious to see how Rick is going to make it so that Apollo beats Python, which, if it's going to be like a Rick Riordan book, like other Rick Riordan books that we've read, he definitely will defeat Python. So I'm curious as to how he's going to do it.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. I think the book summary was. I would have preferred a summary that told us more about the plot, even though I think we do know a lot about what's going to happen in the book from the conclusion to the Tyrant's Tomb. Going back to what you were saying about how he's going to defeat Python, I actually have my theory about it is that some point like before the finale, he Meg whoever else is with him, maybe Nico, they defeat Nero, and then as his reward for defeating Nero, the final emperor, Zeus gives him his godly powers back, and then he has to quickly go and fight Python by himself. And he still has that danger because it was hard for him to fight Python as a god, and he's still fighting Python as a god. Except so he has the part where he
That would
kills
make a
Nero
lot
as a
of
mortal with his
sense.
friend's help. Yeah, but I also so I think that might happen because otherwise it would be really hard for him to defeat Python. But another theory I have is that it would be more sort of have more showing more character grow for him if he does have to face Python as a mortal and he does end up defeating him as a mortal when he could barely defeat him as a god before. I think that would show a lot more growth in Apollo. And it would also be like he defeats Python, but he's like about to die. He's like dying from his wounds in the battle. And
And
like with
then they
Python,
make
and then
him a
Zeus is like,
god
oh
to
yeah,
save him.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that would be
that's
cool.
uh
That's a
mhm.
possibility.
Let's talk about the preview chapters. Like, what was your thoughts after
As a
reading
whole.
the preview chapters?
Well, I thought, first of all, I feel really bad for that double-headed snake. That was kind of
Oh
like
man,
that was
that
something
sucks.
depressing that they just kind of skipped over. It's like, I'm gonna go back home to my wife and kids dies. And it's like, oh,
Well, no,
well,
his wife was gonna kill him for missing his train stop. So
yeah, yeah, but still, that was so sad. And it was kind of like, and then they refuse to explain like why a monster is in a business suit riding a train. Cause like I don't think we've ever seen a monster that does something like close to normal, right? I think Auntie M and like Tyson living on the streets was like the closest thing that we've seen to like a human monster. As in like they're doing something human.
And even when we do have monsters masquerading and doing things that are human, like which I think is actually pretty often in the textbooks. I disagree with you that it's rare, but it's usually just a disguise to kill.
Someone.
Yeah, like we recently discussed the Son of Neptune on the podcast, and the thing is, like very beginning, the Gorgons are dressed up as, oh geez, what are they're like just trying to sell cheese and wieners, but again, it's just like a front so they could try to kill Percy Jackson, or often monsters pretending to be teachers. So that's like a real job, but they're just trying to kill demigods
Oh
through the
yeah.
job. So the fact that this monster, he does have a job, but it doesn't appear that he's using the job to pretend to kill demigods. I think that's actually pretty interesting, but it is kind of just glazed over as he's killed.
Very quickly. It's like the crossbow bolt appeared in him. Ah, there's something else to worry about. Let's just abandon the dead guy. It's like, what did everybody else think? Did they just like see a guy like fall asleep or like die? And why did nobody else react? Like the entire quiet car is supposed to be quiet. And for most of the
It's the mist,
chapter,
Diego. Diego, it's the mist. It's the
how
mist.
does the
Okay,
mist deal
just
with sound? What?
Diego, it's the mist.
Okay.
Diego,
All
it's
right.
the mist.
That's
Okay.
fair. That's fair.
But I was quickly reminded of how much I love the chemistry between Meg and Apollo
Oh
when
yeah.
Apollo's like, Meg, there's a monster, and Meg is just like, shh, we're on a train. It was and especially like the repetition of that was pretty funny. But then pretty quickly it was like, oh, we're getting captured by some of Nero's guys. Oh, but one of them is letting us escape. It's
Yeah,
it's very
on and off. It was very action packed for like the first two chapters of a book. Like we got a like fight scene on a train. They got captured. Somebody got assassinated, and then a betrayal happened. All within like 10 pages. So if the rest of the book goes like this, I think it's gonna be amazing.
yeah, I do hope we get some quiet moments where we get to have some of our favorite characters kind of reflect, like Percy, Annabeth, Nico, and Will are already confirmed for the book. So but I don't hope the whole book is action packed, but I do hope that we get enough of the action. But I do want those reflective moments for the characters. But we have been waiting far too long. Let's get into our.
Myth research. Yeah. Sam, want to go first?
I did some research on the two-headed snake guy. It's in the chapter. It's called an amphisbaena. So I don't know if the creature is going to return again in the Tower of Nero. It might be, with Python, it might be one too many snakes. So we might not get like
Yeah.
an army of two-headed snake people. But just in case they appear more than once, I did some research on them. So Apollo didn't really have to worry a lot about the creature trying to eat him because usually they eat ants. That's like their food of choice, ants. So maybe they could come to Camp Half Blood and get rid of all those giant ones. It's also the kind of creation myth for this certain monster is that when Perseus was flying around with Medusa's head, he was flying over a desert, and then the head was still leaking blood. So a bunch of the Gorgon's blood fell out of Medusa's head, and when it hit the sand from far above, it turned into one of these two-headed snakes. And also, just to redescribe it, because I think two-headed snake kind of is misleading. So it's not like it branches off into two snakes. It's like the snake doesn't have a tail on either side. It's just a head. So that's the way it looks
I
instead
wonder
of
how
branching
that
off.
like fits into a business suit. Like how does that work? Is its butt like a head?
I think the idea was that it was like curved, so it's like in a U shape. So like its two
Oh,
heads are at
okay.
the top.
Okay, that makes sense. Still kind of weird. That must have taken like a very well-tailored business suit.
Diego, you said it's still kind of weird, and then I had to debate whether to say Diego, we're dealing with Greek myths, or Diego, we're dealing with Rick Riordan.
Either of those would have been an appropriate answer. So moving on to some research I did. I did some research on something that was a little bit like less obvious, but they kind of glazed over it in the preview chapters. But if you check in the preview chapters, Apollo kind of mentions the origin of Lou's name, and seeing as Lou is probably gonna take up a big role in the first couple of chapters, obviously because she is saving Meg and Apollo, I figured I could do some research. So just to kind of iterate, Apollo says in the narrator voice, he says, "The name Lugu Selwa. My Gaulish had never been very good, but I thought it meant beloved of the god Lugus. I shuddered. Those Celtic deities were strange, fierce bunch." So from some research that I did on Lugus, he is the ancient Celtic god of kind of very similar to the god Mercury or Hermes, and he kind of he had like a really strange birth in which he was his mom was a virgin goddess, but the great magician named Math, don't ask about the name, I don't get why his name was Math, but probably math didn't exist back then. The word math. So the guy was just named Math. But he was a great magician, and he kind of placed child in her, and then she gave birth to the child, he was actually raised by his uncle. So it's a really weird story. But I thought that it was very interesting that she was the beloved of the Celtic god of similar to Mercury. So if you guys probably know, but Hermes is a messenger. So I thought that like Lou could he could have come up with a name to mean messenger, and Lou has come all this way to deliver, like, one, to save them, but also to deliver a message about maybe something that is upcoming as they arrive in New York.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. Also, there could be plot twist. She is the that particular god
Oh yeah,
in disguise.
that would
Dun,
be
dun,
weird, but it'd
dun.
make sense. It'd definitely be within Rick's grasp.
I actually do prefer your theory that she's named that because not because she is that god, but because she has to deliver a message to them.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say some last thing. So since he is the beloved, she is the beloved of the god Lugus. I thought I might actually talk about Lugus's wife in mythology, and since she prevented her mother prevented him from having a wife, right? So Gwydion created a woman for Lugus out of flowers. So another interpretation is that Lug is actually a flower woman, which would make sense since she's the caretaker of, well, assumed caretaker, um from the way that Meg interacts with her. I think she might have been one of Meg's caretakers back when she was with Nero, but that would make sense because she's the caretaker of a daughter of Demeter, so therefore she would be a flower woman. I don't know, these are all speculations.
Yes. The last thing I kind of want to discuss research wise is we got a new type, of soldier. We got these gulls, and that's not to be confused with a gull, which is like a ghost thingy, but a Gaul, a Gaul, and so they were a group of Celtic tribes that inhabited Europe during the Roman Empire, and they would like attack the Romans and stuff. They were kind of seen as total brutes by the Roman Empire, and so they didn't really have any
Barbarians.
unified. Yeah, yeah, barbarians. So they didn't really have any unified leader. They just kind of share this language and this countryside. But
Until
then
Julius
eventually there were
Caesar marched in his legions and conquered them. And then, as they were being conquered, they unified under one leader, but then Julius Caesar killed them anyway. So,
and the Gauls weren't the only barbarians. There were other barbarians, but the specific conquering of the Gauls instead of like barbarians as a whole, the specific conquering of the Gauls is called the Gallic Wars, and that happened during the 50s before Christ, not the 1950s. That would be too
yeah,
recent.
that would have been like, huh, Julius Caesar was around. 70 years ago.
Yeah, I feel like we'd be teaching bad history to like uh, the little kids who listen to this podcast. But eventually, the Gauls mostly, culturally adapted to the Roman world, and they created like their own culture, the Gallo-Roman culture. But they were still soldiers for the Roman Empire, and apparently, according to Apollo, they're still kind of feared by Romans and Roman gods, even though they're the reason they're working for Nero now is because they were conquered by the Romans and working for the Romans, and now they're working for the last remaining Roman emperor.
And I kind of want to make a speculation here. The Gauls united under one leader right before Julius Caesar destroyed them, and that leader was Vercingetorix. So maybe he might make an appearance.
Oh yeah, that would be like not a random thing, but like a like a card that Rick Riordan could pull as an ace like out of his sleeve.
Yeah, I guess.
There are a lot more things we got from the bonus chapters that we want to discuss about the Tower of Nero.
And obviously, we're going to get character highlights and promotional articles as we get closer, from which we can deduce more things. So we're going to cut off the discussion here and talk about the rest of the things in a later episode.
Yeah, and the book comes out September 28th.
8th.
I think it's 29th. 28th?
No, it's
29. 29.
It is? Okay. It's somewhere near my birthday,
Yes,
so figured.
Oh. Rick Riordan's giving you a birthday present.
Exactly. That's what I thought. Maybe if we're at that point in September, we can get him to sign it for my birthday. Say happy birthday, Diego. That'd be sick.
Yeah. It wouldn't age well, would it though? Happy birthday, Diego.
No.
You're like, my birthday's in 6 months.
That'd be cool though.
But that's that would be cool. Rick Riordan, if you listen to this podcast, I don't think you do, but if you do, you should get Diego an autographed copy for his birthday. That's it for this episode of the Half-Blood Report. Diego, how can I contact this podcast?
You can tweet at us with compliments, questions, corrections, or suggestions on Twitter at HalfReport. You can also find us on Instagram at The Half-Blood Report or email us at our website, thehalfbloodreport.com. That said, it's time for credits. Music on this podcast is actually by me.
I do most of our editing, and our recording equipment is on loan from William Bachman.
My co-host here is Samuel, and I'm Diego.
This is the Half-Blood Report podcast, the only HBR that matters.
We'll see you next week.